Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sally Chew from Temasek Polytechnic in Singapore. And as the moderator for this session, it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to STADA's inaugural webinar. This webinar has been organized as part of STADA's 40th anniversary celebrations. The Singapore Training and Development Association, STADA, was established in 1972 by a group of corporate training professionals from MNCs as well as the public sector who were all eager to learn from each other and to share best practices. Webinars like this one will bring together experts and thought leaders from around the world. They are part of STADA's commitment to the sharing of knowledge for the development of human capabilities for all its stakeholders. The topic for today's session is Results-Centric Performance Management. And we have with us this morning two very distinguished speakers to share their thoughts with us. Our first speaker, her area of interest is organizational behavior management and effective tools of learning and development. She's also the author of the bestseller, The Work Revolution, Freedom and Excellence for All. She has been featured on CNBC USA Today and other business publications as an advocate for innovative work management practices. She has also been the Chief Learning Officer of Kali Corporation. She has worked at Google and now serves as Head of Organizational and People Development of 2 Sigma Investments in New York. And our second speaker is Mr. Teong Wan from Singapore. Mr. Ong spans a 50-year career from the production floor to the boardroom. He has served on the Economic Development Board, the National Productivity Board in Singapore, amongst others. He is also the founding member and past president of STADA. Besides that, Mr. Ong is also an author. His books, and this particular one, Results Management, has been translated to other languages. Mr. Ong is currently the Managing Consultant at Management Wise International Singapore that focuses on the human side of enterprise productivity. So, to all who are listening in and participating, let's get comfortable in front of our laptops, computer screens, and without much further ado, let's kick off this inaugural STADA webinar. Dr. Clow, over to you.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to just start by sharing a few ideas that are core to the way that I think about performance management, the way that I think about results in the work environment. There are just a few thoughts to get the ball rolling. It's certainly not the definitive guide to performance management, but it'll definitely hopefully start to help you think more broadly about how you can translate our typical work practices and things that we think about traditionally into new innovative ways of approaching that. So I'm going to share my desktop and pull up my slides here, if you will bear with me for one moment. And what I'd like to do is just share the 5 principles that I outline in my book, The Work Revolution. So the idea behind this book was that I had worked in very traditional organizations for many years and experienced an environment in which it was very rule-based, very top-down from the management. So in other words, it was a good organization, it was an effective organization, but at the same time, there wasn't a lot of room for creativity, for innovation. It was very much around, here's the work you need to do, now go do it. And so when I transitioned from that sort of environment to Google, I was absolutely blown away by how different I felt as a professional. All of a sudden, I was empowered and I was trusted, and I could go and do a lot of different things without having explicit permission to do that. And these 5 principles really underlie that. It's really about focusing on impact, not the activities of the people around you. So in other words, it doesn't matter what time you come in or leave, it's more about the impact that you're creating for your organization. Energy, not schedules, is around entrusting each individual to set their own schedule and figure out the times that they work best. Strengths, not job slots, is about figuring out what your talents are and how you can uniquely contribute to the organization. The right things, not everything is about prioritization. And then grassroots, not top-down, is really about empowering your workforce to actually do problem solving. So what I'd like to do is take these 4 principles and talk about how they apply to thinking about results in the context of performance management. So starting at the top, impact, not activities. It's crucially and vitally important, especially as organizations are bigger and the work that we do is more specialized, to ensure that there's a connection between the work that we're doing and the meaning that it has. And further, what you want to do is reward individuals based on the impact that they're creating, not on the number of hours that they put in or the amount of time that you see them in the office or how early they get in and how late they leave. It really is about how much people are doing to actually make a change and to make positive impact to the organization. Energy, not schedules, is about defining things that are truly urgent. So in other words, of all the deadlines that we have in our organization, there are some deadlines that are based on true urgency, whether it be the needs of our customers, whether it be hours that were open or peak hours in a call center. Those are things that we can essentially communicate very crisply and clearly, and then empower individuals with flexibility around those times. So giving people the trust that they will come in and they will do the work when they know that they have the energy to do that and then they know that it needs to get done. Strengths, not job slots, is about hiring individuals so that you're finding people who really fit well with your culture. So this is about finding people who work well together and have similar interests and really are able to just appreciate the contributions that everybody's bringing to the organization. And then furthermore, it's about finding the best role for every single person. So once you've established, yes, this person is great for our organization, the next step is how do you then find the best role for every single individual in the organization? The right things, not everything, is about getting very clear on the priorities of the organization. The more we have going, the more we could do, and the bottom line is our to-do lists are endless. And we can get drowned in just a morass of things going on. So as leaders, it's incredibly important for us to communicate what the priorities are that gives people the ability to focus on the most important things for the organization, which links back up to impact, not activities. If you focus people on the right things, then they'll be able to create a greater impact in the end. And then the final piece is grassroots, not top-down. So in this context, what you want to think about doing is pushing problem solving down to the lowest level possible. So rather than leaders dictating the work that needs to get done and how it needs to get done, it's more about setting those priorities and then freeing people to solve those problems in the best way that they can. And it's really giving people the tools they need to make the right decisions and to think about the problem solving in a way that's consistent. But at the same time, what you're doing is you're tapping into the collective intelligence of your organization when you're telling everybody around, hey, we trust you to be able to do the work in the best way. So given that these are the principles, what I'm going to do is turn it back over and as we talk about questions later on, I can address some of these things and link it back in more tangible ways. Because I know these are very high-level principles, but at the same time, I think that they give us what I call guiding principles for how we can think about focusing on results rather than focusing on the activities in our organization.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Clow. I'm sure that people who are listening in find that very helpful and very useful. Ladies and gentlemen, we will keep your questions for later. Keep them on your writing pads. But now, we'd like to invite our second distinguished speaker, Mr. Ong, to share with us. Mr. Ong, all over to you.
Thank you, Stanley. Well, a lot of things that Julie has said resonate with me as I elaborate and find the similarities. We'll start from the first page. Looking at the organization in whole as a macro, my take is that organizational effectiveness and differentiation depends on how strategies are implemented. And strategies are implemented below 9/10 of the iceberg, and that's at the operational level. A lot of things that Julie has talked about. What are the things that underpin the organizational strength within? First, the core values. Well, these are often articulated but not translated into operational practices. A good example of that is McDonald's. They have translated into operational practices. That is why it's so strong as an organization. But a lot of these are in mission statements, nice for the atrium, but sometimes not translated. But organizations that translate that into practice and build that into the organizational structure where roles are defined. And if there are role conflicts or there are functional gaps and overlaps, to be sure there will be loss of productivity. Right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. People want more authority to do their jobs better, but people try to shun accountability. So our results were built in the accountability, and therefore using that we will have to redefine the authority levels that each one has to have. Then there's a process of delivering the product and the service to the customer or the client. All these three things really are the core areas to make an organization strong. And that's how one organization differentiates itself from the other. There are hamburgers and there are hamburger joints, but McDonald's stands out because they're able to encapsulate all that into a system. Okay, so if that's an illustration, I have another one which I'll talk about later on. A questioner from India will talk about that. I'll give that example. So what do? We put all this together into a results management system. The other thing that I want to highlight is a lot of companies want to differentiate by strategy. After a while, the strategies are copied by people. You can differentiate by product, but there are many lookalikes now. Apple came out, now we have Androids. There are differences, of course, to prevent the infringement of patents and copyrights. But after a while, the product differentiations all get very, very watered down. Same thing with the price. The prices, you can differentiate with the way you package your pricing, but after a while, all these things, the market will stabilize it. So the only thing that really differentiates one organization from the other is really this one. Okay, in the same way that we differentiate one individual from another, his values and the way he does things. Okay, so this is the system that I have put in place to capture all that. So with the strategy focus for the year, for any organization, then the product and service delivery system must take over. But I can take over in getting the business only if these things are in order. Okay, and some of the principles that Julie articulates come into here. So your operations process flow, everybody contributes to that to deliver the end product to the customer or the client. Then there are people with jobs. We have our functional links. We have our functions all captured in the organization structure. Their performance standards are written down there, the expectations in the job descriptions. So we have an operations manual, so everyone takes over. From here, you set your targets or the results expected according to the needs for the year and the jobs, put them into action plans. Then during the year, somebody will have to discharge this, and that is employee. But then the manager also comes in here to help. If he's having problems, you help him with the problems. If not, let him solve it. Communication, motivation comes into play here, and that's where the getting people energized comes from here. At the end of the year, you do an appraisal of performance based on the results expected, actual. Then you do the appraisal rating. That leads to the compensation system, okay, pay for performance. At the other side, after the person has done work for a year, you will know his strengths and weaknesses, and that leads into the talent management system, where you try to fit in people, that's career planning, and there's succession planning, career development, and so on. Okay, so all in all, what I'm talking about is actually very basic. I've learned for all the gurus, and I translate them into a very basic system. What Julie calls core principles, I call them first principles. So what is my measurement system? Nothing sophisticated. Everybody can understand it. The CEO can understand it. The janitor can understand this. What am I supposed to put out in terms of value or volume? But that's the output. How much time do I need to put that out? That's the input. What is the quality of the output? I can produce a lot, but all faulty is no use. Okay. So what is the quality of the output? What is the cost incurred in producing that output and that output? So that's another input. And that's what productivity is all about, the ratio of outputs over inputs. Now, there's something else I built into the measurement, not many systems built into, and that's the human impact and human reaction. Yes, a salesperson may deliver all this. Sales value hit 1 million. He did it within a year. The client did not return the goods. The entertainment expenses and other expenses are small enough, so there's big output. Now, the next question is the clients. Do they come back to you and repeat the purchase? You may have the best product in the world. They have to buy it from you because they have to buy it from you because it's good. You can get a quantity. But the way you deal with your customer, the human relation, will he be happy enough to place an order? He might. But will he be happy enough to refer you to other customers? Now, that is the reaction we have to measure. And that is often forgotten. And we call that EQ, or customer relations. It's the same thing with production. You can do all your production output, meet all your schedules, but if your people are so tired with overtime, they fall sick, they get into accidents, that is a human impact that we forget to measure. Okay? A country may have the best economic development, but the gap between the haves and have-nots is so great that there's a lot of social and class envy leading to a lot of resentment. So this is a thing that's often misunderstood or overlooked in our measurement system. And finally, this is what it is. Everybody has a part to play in delivering the quantity, time, cost, human impact. Everyone in the value-added chain. This is a customer, this is input. Even the purchasing manager, he gives everything that these people need, quantity, time, quality. How does he treat the supplier? Does he treat the supplier in a very decent, civil way? Or does he treat him with disdain? Now, what is happening is, if there's a material shortage, if you don't treat the supplier well, he can give you the goods that you want, in the right specifications, but he is so cheesed out by your very, very patronizing attitude or very rude attitude, he will say, sorry, I don't have any supplies for you. Now, that is the type of impact, and your whole operation will be jammed. Everyone in the process, operations people, admin support people, everybody should have this measurement. And then this is the customer relations marketing people, and that's the end user. The end user does not also expect all this. Okay? Now, what does this all mean? What we want to do is tell employees, and that's where the empowerment, the ownership comes in. And this is, nowadays, every job here can be outsourced. You are here because you have a captive customer, that is a company. So you are an employee. You're guaranteed of a customer. But if this were outsourced to you, you have to look for your customer. So you will also deliver this in order we can continue renewing the contract with you. So this is what the whole system is all about. So it covers quite a lot of things. Okay? Right. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ong, for that very in-depth sharing. We have now heard from both our speakers, actually, what I can call two sides of the same coin. Viewers, we are now taking questions. We invite you to write in to STADA's Facebook page right now, and we will get your questions going as soon as we receive them. In the meantime, I see that Mr. Stefan Michaud is on the screen. Mr. Stefan, hi. Mr. Stefan is the Regional HRD Manager from Mitsubishi Japan. I understand that there is a group of students from the Global Connect Club Temasek Polytechnic who are on now. I'm sure the students have some questions to ask. Students, would you like to ask our speakers? These questions and answers you're going to get is very important because you are preparing for employment and you need to know what your employers expect of you and how you can do your best and be the best. Over to you, students. Stephen, let me know when you're on. Students, if you're on, say your name. And what's your question?
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Bernice, and my question is, how does notions of individual empowerment take into consideration cultural factors like collectivism and hierarchy that are common in Asian cultures?
Can you repeat that one more time? Sorry. So you talk about individual empowerment. How is that? How do you consider that in the context of what other aspects?
And considering in collectivization and hierarchy.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a very, very complicated question. I think it's a good one. But I think that in terms of looking at an organization, you want to think about two things. One is the culture, and I think that it's incredibly important for every organization to have a collective culture that really defines norms for how people interact with one another, how they treat one another, what's important to the company. We were both talking about values. I think that's an important component of that. So I think that there is a very strong importance for collectivism within the organization. But at the same time, the question then becomes, how do you empower every individual to contribute to that in their own way? So while individuals will each uniquely contribute to it, the idea is that the end result is a collective reward, that you are all contributing to the organization, that the impact you create really then comes back together in the end. So you're not wanting to necessarily celebrate any one individual, you're wanting to actually push towards the success of the entire company. Now, where this becomes complicated is when you talk about compensation systems. So while you do want to focus on team accomplishments and the success of the company, you also want to understand who's contributing what, so that you can fairly reward individuals and so that you motivate individuals to keep pushing hard. So Mr. Ong,
Okay.
maybe comment on that a little bit.
Okay, Renee, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I want to talk about something very similar. Firstly, on a family basis, and then secondly on a work basis, which will be hard. When my son's overseas, there were two things I could do, right? I could empower them with a credit card that can they sign at will. I did not do that. That would be total empowerment. And besides, it's not his money, it's my money. But I said, okay, this amount will be credited to your bank, how many thousand a week. You spend within that, you can go and buy a car, you can buy a bicycle, and you have no money to pay your fees, that's it, okay? That's empowerment. So what I'm trying to drive at is, even at work, empowerment is the ability, the authority to decide. Authority, how much authority do you need? But authority is also commensurate with the accountability for results. The higher the results you're accountable for, the more authority that you need. The CEO needs more authority than the janitor. The CEO is accountable for bigger impact results. This janitor is accountable for smaller impact results, so it's still results. So how much? I was dealing with a telco last week, and during the engagement survey, these things came out, that the workers wanted more empowerment. So I asked, what is that? He said, okay, I'm in the front line, I'm meeting a customer. I'm supposed to make sure the complaints are down, the compliments are up, and they're happy with whatever service and answer that I give them. So, but if a customer comes up with a very creative idea, can you bundle this for me? I'm not asking for a discount. In the end, can you give me, say, free warranties for the rest of the life of this product? Will you give that to me? I'll pay the price you give me. These are the things that they need to do their work, right? So the way to do it is, if you are a student and you sit down at the beginning of the year and say, okay, this is the results I'm promising to achieve. So many millions or whatever, or so many products I want to sell. But in order to do this, I need more authority to decide when I meet the customer. But for every request that the customer asks, and I have to call back to office, can I give this or can I give that? That is going to frustrate me. That's going to frustrate the customer. But if you give me like about 10-20% buffer within which I can use my creativity to service the customer, well, you get that from me, and that will be empowerment because I'm accountable for the result. I'm asking for this authority to decide because I'm accountable for the result. I think that's a way. So even if you're dealing with control freaks who don't trust new employees, you say, I'm going to bring in these results for you. Why are you worried about? I'm acting like an entrepreneur. I'm behaving as though I'm running a business within a business. So won't you give that to me? And if the fellow is still not willing, then you are a talent owner, by the way. You can bring your talent to sell to anyone you want. How's that? Okay, Renee? And we're going to be at the age of entrepreneurs now. You all need to think that it's not going to be easy to stay in a company forever. After a while, you might be displaced.
Thank you.
Okay? And you have full autonomy to run your own company.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clow and Mr. Ong. I'm sure there will be more questions coming, but I noticed that Mr. Bobby Sajuti, Head Research Marketing in Lingua from Indonesia, has joined us. Bobby, are you there?
Bobby.
Bobby, you're there? Are you ready with your questions?
Well, I'm just listening in from now because I was preparing for the exhibition, so I just joined in. Sorry about that.
We will come back to you in a moment for your questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is Stefan on from Japan?
Yes, I'm trying to. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Wonderful.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Okay. So my question is, how best the knowledge and office workers?
Okay, your question is, Dr. Clow and Mr. Ong, how to best measure the productivity of knowledge and office workers?
Yes.
It is a question that both Mr. Ong and Dr. Clow can well answer. Dr. Clow, having worked in Google amongst many companies with that kind of a background, and Mr. Ong on the other side of the coin. So I'm not sure which of you would like to answer first. Dr. Clow, would you like to take the question first?
Sure. How do you measure the productivity, the knowledge of employees? This is probably the hardest part of all of this. I mean, I think that's really the point of this entire discussion, is how do you really do that in an effective way? I tend to think of it in a couple of different ways. One, there are what we could call leading indicators of performance, and then there are lagging indicators of performance. So whether you think about it from an individual perspective or the company perspective, leading indicators are things that you think will result in impact down the road. So for example, in HR, one of the things that I measure myself on is engagement of employees. We have things like survey questions that we ask everyone to understand how engaged people are. Now, responses on survey questions aren't necessarily results. They're a leading indicator of retention down the road. So if we see engagement going down, we think that's going to correlate with retention going down over time. Now, a lagging indicator would be retention, so it would be our actual turnover rate that we're tracking. And so in that particular instance, you don't know when you've had an impact until it's too late. So retention is a lagging indicator, and once somebody walks out the door, it's too late. So I think it's important to actually pay attention when you're measuring things to try to come up with some leading indicators of how you're doing, and then also capturing those lagging indicators to make sure you're focusing on the right things. With respect to an individual, I mean, there's different things that you can measure. You can measure quality of work, you can measure quantity of work. You want those things to go up, and you can measure the time it takes to do things, the costs associated with doing things. You want those things to go down. But ultimately, there will be different measures for every single role in the organization, and I think that becomes a conversation you have with every individual. So as a manager, you know, what you want to do is have conversations with every individual to understand what are the goals and what are the measures for success. So I'll give you an example for this. One individual that I manage is what we are calling a community manager. So in other words, we really tap into the grassroots community throughout our organization to get everybody in our organization to teach things. So in other words, if you're an expert in statistics, then we want you to teach statistics to the rest of the people in the company. Or if you just finished a project that you think is interesting, we want you to present a brown bag on that particular project. So her job, Julia's job, is actually to increase community participation in our organization. How do we measure that? We measure that by the number of sessions that we hold every year. We measure it by the number of individuals who are contributing as a teacher in the company. We measure it also by the impact. How many individuals are actually attending this? Are we reaching every single individual in the organization through some kind of learning and development initiative? So the number of unique individuals that we reach every year is another measurement. So those are things that together we have come up to understand how to measure that particular job. And that's going to be unique to every single person, to every single role, to the goals that you're setting for people, and the way in which you define success for your organization.
Okay, let me take.
Thank you, Dr. Clow.
Let me take your question. You mentioned knowledge and office workers. I separate the two. Knowledge and skills are means to an end, and that is to use by the employee to use to deliver results. So how do I measure the work of office workers? Let's take one in charge of filing, office worker, filing cabinet. What I can measure in terms of quantity, time, quality, cost, and human impact. Well, how fast, how many files she has to do a day, a week or so, and then everything is filed up at the end of the day, and she's got to do it. The time could be every day, 24 hours, or if there's a company ruling that there is no confidential file to be left on the table at any time because of security reasons, then it's got every file has to be filed within a limited time, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or within the workday. That will be the time required, and how many files are being done. The quality, of course, is no misfiling, put in the wrong slot, and the measurement for that is the retrieval time. You have a lot of time trying to retrieve files which are wrongly allocated. Then what about the cost? Well, you need folders and so on. Can you combine the folders into one so you save costs on the folders? And this is why she has to use an ingenuity or innovativeness in order to try to do the best way of filing as much as possible without no loss of data, and yet save costs on folders and other things that are needed to do the filing work. Human impact and human reaction will be there should be no lost information, confidential information of individuals and so on, traceable to the poor filing system. So those are the things you can measure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evan, you okay with that?
Thank you very much.
You have a further question for both of them?
Yeah, we mentioned before KRA, right? And sorry, I joined a little bit later. KRA. So, what would be for the audiences? Because we had some problems here also at Mr. Corporate, explaining that to the employees, the difference between KRAs and KPIs. Basic question, but I think it's important to mention.
Julie, you want to take that, or do you want me to take that?
Go ahead. I couldn't quite hear, so maybe I'll be able to add to what you said.
You want to know the difference between KRAs and KPIs. Right. Well, this is often the problem, and a lot of people are talking about KPIs as though they are targets. That's not so. The process of establishing performance measures under those 5 key results areas that I talk about: quantity, time, quality, cost, human impact, starts with expectation or intention. If it is my own target, it's my intention. What do I want to be? I want to be a rich man one day. That will be the process. Expectations of company, what is expected from you? Okay, I want you to be able to sell $1 million worth of products or production within a certain time, and so on. All the rest, all those things come in. So we can categorize the broad KRAs. The key results areas I talk about are quantity, time, quality, cost, human impact. Those are the generic KRAs. It covers any job, the janitor, even the CEO's job. But then the specific KRA is specific to the job. Under those, you talk with the person, what are the quantity and so on, then you say, okay, if it is sales, then you value or volume. If it is production, it's volume, and so on. If it is a finance person, the quantity is those 5 monthly reports, those with quality and no faults, no errors, and so on. Don't use overtime. And then human impact, that people use the financial reports as a human impact. If it is such a unfriendly way, if it's user-friendly, then people will use that. They're about human impact. Okay, so those are key results areas. Then you need to look for how I'm going to measure those results areas. For the CEO, the KPI, key performance indicator, is a unit of measurement. It's like Celsius and Fahrenheit that we use. Those are KPIs that we measure climate with. The key results areas of climate are temperature, rainfall, and wind speed and stuff like that. Those are the key. Then the wind speed, you had a KPI for wind speed, the Beaufort scale. Those are KPI. So in terms of health, your health, the key results areas are your cholesterol count, your blood pressure, uric acid, and sugar level. Those are key. Then the doctors will have, milligram per deciliter. All those are the KPIs. Then your targets will be, if your cholesterol, what is the target for cholesterol level at your age? Should be less than 200 and stuff like that will be the target. So the KPI is a unit of measure. Key results areas are the areas that cover your expectation and the perception, okay, or intentions. So if I want to be a rich man one day, considered successful one day, in Singapore, we measure success with how much money I have, how many assets I have. So the assets, those are key results area. And then the measure of those assets will be fixed assets and liquid assets and stuff like that. So that's the difference, okay? Expectation, key results area, KPI. The target is between the boss and the subordinate. And you set a target that is achievable and challenging. And that's where you create ownership too, okay? So it's a thinking process. And with that, it is possible to set and measure anything of human endeavor. It's not a perfect measure, but acceptable measures, okay?
I think something that's important to keep in mind anytime we talk about measurement is, A, it's incredibly important to have measurement because what you measure is what you get, and B, that you stay flexible around those measurements for a couple of reasons. One, because sometimes you may realize that you're measuring the wrong thing, and when you're measuring the wrong thing, if it's a leading indicator, you're going to realize down the road it's actually not getting the results that you thought that you were looking for. And so it's a constant process of iterating on what you're measuring to make sure that you're driving towards the right thing. I think the second reason to be cautious is that you don't want to over specify what you're looking for. So to become very specific is very good in some instances, and in other instances can be very limiting. Because if you measure somebody, for example, on the number of hours that they sit in a seat, that's only correlated with performance, and often very poorly correlated with performance. So if you're measuring the wrong thing, you're going to get somebody sitting in a seat for a very long time, you may not get performance. And so you want to make sure that what you're measuring is in fact correlated with performance, but you're also giving people the freedom to find creative ways of reaching towards a goal. So that's why it's important to keep work attached to what goal it is that you're driving towards. What are we really trying to accomplish? And how can you free people to be innovative in the solutions and the problem solving to get there? So that's where you have to remain flexible. So yes, you want to measure things, but you also want to empower those individuals to find incredibly new ways of reaching towards those goals.
Very good. Julie, I like that comment because I want to give two examples to really back up what you say. You know, a lot of companies have got this target of must answer the phone call within 3 rings. Okay, so the call comes in and then 3 rings, and the operator, whoever picks up the phone, says, yes, this is XY company. What can I do for you? And then the other side says, I'm looking for some. Oh, sorry, I don't know which department is in, and you put down the phone. But as far as answering the phone in 3 calls, she has done her job, right? Okay. Now the other one is more serious. This was I read somewhere in the papers, and it is true. A medical service in Europe, they wanted to reward the specialist doctors on the number of successful operations, surgeons that they perform. Successful. So successful means quality. Number is a quantity. Okay. So what happens is a lot of surgeons will pick on all the simple surgery cases because everyone must be successful. So they can count upon them. The undesirable outcome is that all those with complicated surgeries were ignored. That is undesirable. I think that's what you're alluding to also. Okay, so we've got to be careful about undesirable outcomes, or some people call it perverted outcomes.
It's a great example.
An education surveys that tried to measure which schools were good. You know, how many A's scores over A-level final examination, how many A's and how many B's, and therefore the schools will be given awards and stuff like that. But what happened is weak students were turned away because they could not contribute to the good results. But what's the purpose of education? To educate everyone, not to educate the smart and brilliant ones. So that's another perverted outcome. Okay? So her point is very correct. You got to make sure that there are no human impact, human reaction, no perverted outcomes. That's under human impact. Okay?
Thank you so much, Dr. Clow and Mr. Ong. I'm sure Stephen is happy with your answers. Let's get over to where the students are. I'm sure the students are still waiting for their turn to ask their questions. And I see someone on the screen now. What's your name, sir?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mukul from Temasek Polytechnic. Actually, I want to refer my question to the first speaker, Ms. Julia. And I'm referring to her point number 4 from a book, which is strengths, not jobs, not job slots. So I want to ask you something. We all have strengths, so they confirm going to be some conflicts within the organization. So can you help us to find out the ways, like how can we resolve the conflicts to find a best fit job for them?
Yes, it's not an easy thing to do, which is why you know, it's hard to do this well within a company, because on the one hand you have things the company is trying to get done, and there's work that has to get done. Some of the work is fun, some of it is not, and then you have this collection of individuals, each who have different strengths in the organization. So I think there's a couple of ways of thinking about it. One, you hire people for the complement of skill sets that you're bringing into an organization. So it's very important to recognize what you have in your organization, what you're missing, so that you can hire people based on strengths that will complement the set of skills that are already in your organization. 2, from an individual's perspective, so if I'm coming into an organization, it's incredibly important for me to be very clear about what I feel like I'm good at, what my talents are, what I really enjoy doing, the work that excites me, the work that I'd rather give away if I had the choice. Because the bottom line is only I know what those things are. It's going to be incredibly difficult for my teammates or my manager to really understand those things in the way that I do. So if I don't speak up for myself, nobody else can possibly know what my strengths are, what I enjoy doing. So as an individual, you have to really stand up for what's important to you. And the way that you do this is through exploration. You know, when you go to work and you start working on projects, what are the projects that really excite you? What are you really good at? What are the things that you do that you look around and it turns out everybody else struggles to do those same things? The more you can observe that and take note of that and then start articulating that, the better that you'll do to help other people understand what your strengths are. Then, as managers, I think it's incredibly important to really try to recognize those strengths in your team and then find ways of allocating work to people based on those complements of strengths. So, for example, what I do with my team is I get us all together in a room and I say, okay, here's the list of things that we have to do. These are our responsibilities. Now, let's each talk about the responsibilities that really excite us, the things that we're really good at, and then let's each also explain to each other the stuff that we're not as interested in or we're not as good at. And inevitably, what happens is that everybody likes and wants to do different things. You'd be amazed at how you can bring a team together, and if you have these conversations, people really do want to focus on different things. So you can actually allocate work on a team based on that. But again, it requires those two pieces. Who am I as an individual? What are my strengths, and can I talk about those things? And then number two, how do we come together as a team to understand how these strengths kind of fit together in this beautiful puzzle so that when we're all working together, we're getting the work done and we're all excited about the work that we're doing.
Okay. You want me to add on to that?
Please, yes.
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. I relate a little bit because career development of youth is also my area of focus, and I'll share with you my own career too. Most of us get a job because of our strength. That opens doors. But I've also seen, and I've been an HR director before, that people that we recruit have a lot of strengths. For example, this job is very innovative and so on. But their strengths are diluted by the environment in which they are played into, because it's an environment which requires a lot of conformance. So that strength is already dissipated. So the thing to remember is you go in a strength, it only gives you confidence. And then don't be deterred by your weaknesses. Sometimes you are your own worst enemy. Because you haven't tried that, you think it's a weakness. We all are capable of doing more things than we think we are capable of, except that we want a chance to try in a risk-free environment. I think that's what it is. Now, you talk about myself. Actually, I'm from the art stream, economics. I'm not very good in the quantitative area. But because I did my MBA, I had to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. But all my life, 26 years consultancy, that's professional business. At age 74, I've just started my own enterprise. And I've never imagined myself to be an entrepreneur. So there you are. Whatever you want to do, don't let your weakness defeat you. Use your strength to give you confidence. That's about all. And confidence is really the best thing you can have for yourself. The moment you can have confidence, you are able to overcome a lot of weaknesses. And you won't look upon that as a weakness. You won't look upon that as a challenge. And that's, I think, how you should orientate yourself if you are serious. Okay? Would I help you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for helping me. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, both speakers. I think we are trying to connect with Elizabeth Misal Kent again. Elizabeth, are we on?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me now?
Very well, thank you.
Oh, that's good. Okay, I'm an educator. I work at the Center for Transcultural Studies, and we're very mindful of the fact that we are preparing our students for a result-centric performance in the global workplace. So thank you, Mr. Ong, for your expertise in the result-oriented area, and Dr. Clow in telling us about your 5 core principles. But my question is, what is your one best advice that you could give us in order to prepare our students for the global workplace?
Best advice on what? I can't hear them. I missed it.
And would you like to repeat your question again, Elizabeth?
What is your one best advice that you can give us so that we can prepare our students for the results-centric performance in the workplace?
Okay. Julie, you want to take that first?
Sure. So I think that in any, well, in the capacity of being a learning professional or working in HR, these are ancillary functions that aren't core to making money. So we are support functions, and our job is to support organizations in a meaningful way. So I feel like perhaps the people that have the most success in these roles are the people who find ways to add value in every interaction that they have in the organization. So it's not that you have to show everybody that you know everything, but that you can bring to the conversation something that makes the jobs of your managers easier. So it's about focusing on our users or our customers, who are ultimately the managers, the business leaders in our organizations. And it's coming to every conversation asking the question, how can I best help this person? How can I make their jobs easier? How can I give them information about data that we have within HR that's going to help them do their jobs better as a manager? And that's a very subtle and hard thing to do. That doesn't require theory and instructional design. It doesn't require, background knowledge in HR. It's really about being in tune with the needs of the organization and finding ways of being able to add value in every single instance, or almost every single instance. I mean, it's important to be a learner too, but that's more of the subtle thing that I think you don't learn necessarily sitting in a university classroom, but that's incredibly important in the real environment.
Okay.
You want to add to it?
Advice to students. Easy. When the economic restructuring report came out, there were three groups of people identified. Julie, we have an economic restructuring report here. MPETs, small and medium enterprises and aging population. Then I discovered that there were quite a lot of mid-career PMETs. PMETs are professionals, managers, executive, and technical people who were displaced. My conclusion, therefore, there's no such thing as lifelong employment, nor long service appointment. If you go beyond 5 years, you are long service. So the thing is, you've got to prepare yourself to think that every job, if the job is not outsourced because of cost consideration, the companies could merge. Acquisitions and mergers are very big. The moment they merge, there will be a lot of duplication of jobs. Some people will have to go. Okay? Or MNCs will pull out to where the cost is cheaper. So no job is safe. You've got to think of yourself as right now, if I have got employment, I'm guaranteed of a customer, right? Every month you get your pay, you deliver. So when you set your targets of what you're going to do, don't think of yourself, you're doing it for the other people. You're imagining that you're an outsourced provider, and these are the deliverables, quantity, time, quality, cost, human, and all the other things that come in. These are deliverables expected of me. I will work accordingly as though I am an outsourced provider, either admin support or sales or whatever it is. And these are the deliverables so that the company will renew my contract. And there are times when it is also possible that the outsourced provider and the company will ask you, would you like to be the outsourced provider since you know our company very well? And straight away from day one, you start your own enterprise, okay? You have a major client. So think along those lines, and that's how you're going to be guaranteed, or what we call lifelong employability. So think of yourself as being employed, but you're actually running a business. Within a business, you have a guaranteed clientele. I think that's the orientation you can best give to yourself. Now, the other thing is, I'm glad in a Polytechnic, I was telling Sally, I think most of entrepreneurs who are in future come from Polytechnic. The reason is, if you have a degree, it's easier. So let's say you apply for a job with another person for the same position. You got a poly diploma, the other one has got a degree. Chances are they will employ the person with a degree, right? So it's easier to get a job with a degree. That's a danger. that will lead to complacency. If you struggle to make a living, to look for a job, you will be more enterprising. And innovativeness comes from challenges. The more deprived you are, the fewer the opportunities for you, the more the challenges, the more innovative you will be, you know. It's like being caught in a traffic jam. If every day you're driving along the same road and suddenly there's a traffic jam, what do? You take an alternative road. Straight away you're being innovative. Isn't that so? So you need a lot of challenges. In fact, don't grumble about the challenges. Don't grumble about hardship. That is the best gift you can get. The best training you can get. No wonder my hair is so grey, right?
Thank you so much, both speakers. I'm not sure if any of the other people I see on my screen are wanting to have questions asked.
Yeah, I have one question.
Come in very quickly.
Yeah, this is from Indonesia. My name is Bobby. I'm the head of research and marketing for Inlingua International Indonesia. Can you hear me well?
Very well, thank you, Bobby.
All right, and I'd like to ask you the questions about in terms of management itself. The thing is, like in our culture in Asia specifically, because we have this age gap, you know, performance thing, and I'm sure that, you know, what I saw, what I found here is that this senior needs more of a coaching instead of counseling. However, in Asian world, we tend to have the counseling part. You know, they accept counseling better than coaching. Now, how would you go about that alternative in terms of Mr. Ong just talked about? What kind of alternative route would you take in terms of that?
Okay, you ask me that question, sorry.
Is that clear?
Julie, would you like to take it?
I'm not sure I really understand the distinction between counseling and coaching necessarily.
Right, in terms of for coaching itself, we basically, because this is what I learned from Mr. Ong's book as well, right? It's the results management. And what the senior over here is that they need to focus on skills and knowledge enhancement instead of, you know, like we focus on the willingness to change. But in Asia, right, we tend to kind of like soft threaten, you know. We thread softly in terms of giving them advice or something like that. So how would you come about that?
Okay, Bobby, I've been given a signal that time is, but I believe you're coming out to Singapore to STADA next week.
Sorry, what?
I believe the time is coming up, and I should stop because I'll take some time. But I believe you're coming out to Singapore to STADA next week.
Next week.
I can elaborate on that. But this is
that would be great.
A quick brush. This is the thing about coaching counseling. We take the stance. It's a problem that a lot of newly promoted fellows who have to manage ex-peers have to face. And you have to manage somebody who is so much older than you, old enough for you to call uncle. How do you handle that? We got to get around that. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ong.
To shift away from the traditional concept of coaching counseling that you're a parent talking to a child. That's not the way. It's got to be an adult approach. Okay? And that's
right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Ong.
I know we're running out of time. I know some of you have many more questions to ask. But if I may, I would just have one last question for you, Dr. Clow. Anton from STADA read both your book and Mr. Ong's book, and that's why he identified both of you to anchor this webinar instead of separately. Would you like to share in what aspects your work complements Mr. Ong's now that you have heard him?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we were talking about a lot of the same things, just from a slightly different perspective. Mine more higher level, and his very much in a a tools-driven way. Like, here's how you actually implement a lot of this stuff. I love what he said about strategy, and I feel like what I'm talking about with respect to the right things, not everything, goes back to what is the strategy of your organization. That will help individuals set priorities or understand the priorities organization. Because ultimately, a strategy says we're going to do this and we're not going to do that. And that is built-in prioritization right there. So I think those ideas are very much consistent with one another. He also talked a lot about performance and the different components of how you measure performance: quantity, quality, time put into something, cost, the human impact. I think all of those things are a really great way of breaking down this very nebulous notion of impact. And I use the word impact intentionally because impact can come in many different shapes and forms depending on what you're trying to accomplish. But I think the way that he breaks it down into those very tangible components is a very helpful way of understanding how do you actually measure these things, how do you measure impact in your organization. And to me, impact is equal to performance. And if you focus on any of those elements in trying to increase quantity, quality, make better human impact, and you're trying to decrease the amount of time you're doing it in and decrease those costs, that is ultimately what's going to result in impact. And I think the other piece that's very consistent with what I talk about is the role of managers and leaders is changing. That we do need to be focused more on coaching people to think about problem solving and how to make decisions as opposed to dictating work in a very two-dimensional way. So it's no longer about leaders coming down and saying, prescribing work in a very specific way, and it's more about challenging people to rise to the occasion and to make decisions consistent with where the organization is heading. I think all of those ideas are very much consistent with one another and actually come together in a really nice way.
And just for the wrap up, Mr. Ong, in what way do you think results management system is different or can enhance the conventional performance appraisal system?
Okay, let me take you back to my first. Which one is that? No, not this one. No? Okay. Okay, let me take you to this one. The usual, the conventional appraisal system is actually a summative evaluation. And I've had so many requests for me to train people how to handle conflicts and appraisal interviews. Now, after all the training and all the good evaluations, still the problem persists. So I came to the conclusion that we are actually looking at the symptom and not the cause. We should be looking more at diagnostic evaluation first, then summative evaluation will take care of itself. So in order to do that, you need certain skills, which Bobby talked about, and this actually is the major part of it, getting people really to want to be energized, in Julie's words, to do what they are expected to deliver. So I go backwards, and then the target setting, people have tried so many things, you know. First, the behavior anchor rating scales that talks about traits that mix up appraisal potential, mix up with appraisal performance. Then they, because of getting a lot of flag, people get into 360-degree appraisal. That means there are more people talking about the same things, and if consensus is everybody says you're good or no good, that's what it is. Sorry, it's out of my hands. Then we get into other measures that cannot cascade down, because those measures like balance scorecard are very appropriate, very good at the top level, strategic level, but they don't come down to the operational level. So we're dealing also at the operational level, and this is actually the meat. Setting this one, having done that, is half an hour at the beginning of the year. How to achieve this, the meat of the manager's work should be around here. At the end of it, we hope they will do a self-appraisal, as they would if they own their own businesses. So that's, in that way, I'm looking now at not appraisals per se, but at the human side of enterprise productivity.
Thank you so much, both speakers. And viewers, with that, we have come to the end of this webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Clow and Mr. Ong, for making this special session so useful, so relevant, and so engaging. Thank you so much, Stefan, Bobby, and everybody else, Elizabeth, and the students for logging in. Your contributions have made it interesting and more interesting for those who are listening in. Now, the video for this session will be uploaded on STADA's YouTube account for viewing. It's also on STADA's website. Please search for STADA Singapore and you'll find the video. And of course, to our LinkedIn users, you can view this on the group called Community Spirit. This is Sally Chiu signing off from the Global Connect Village at Temasek Polytechnic in Singapore. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.